feel like Richard really set this up well because I'm going to be talking about how designers sort of contend with our desire for, that's the end, that's the last slide, for quality and control over our work when we are designing for brands that, or for atomization and brands, when your brand, you own your brand, but so does the community. It's being passed around a lot. So I'm speaking specifically kind of about the idea of designing for quantity or scale. So I'm the creative director at Airbnb, and I'm on the art department. The art department is a creative department that's made up of designers, filmmakers, photographers, writers, and producers. So we're not on the product team, though we do work closely with them. And I lead a new team within that art department dedicated to trips, which I'll talk a little bit more about. So as Dana mentioned, 2 of the founders of Airbnb are designers. So design is very central to the business, and it influences the way we work. One of our core values is every frame matters, and that's a reminder to consider every part of the experience, including our beautiful offices, which you can see here. So today I want to talk a little bit about quality and what it means for a brand. And I've really started geeking out about this idea, so hopefully I can bring you along with me. In fact, my ACD was like, quality is just the difference between one thing or another. Like, what's your big idea here? So from what I gather, most of us do agree that quality is important to a business. But when I asked around quality, or at least how we get there, it doesn't seem to be an absolute. There are nuances of what quality means, and depending on your role, business goals, values, or place in the world, you might define it differently. I think this is important because I think it shapes how we might approach designing for quality, especially as our brands grow and change, and even more so when we're asked to design for quality at scale. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my journey today and the shifting roles I've had as a designer and now as a creative leader in relationship to quality. So to start, I'll tell you about my previous job. How many of people here have heard of Kidrobot? Oh, I guess it's designers, so that makes sense. It's a pretty niche art toy company that makes collectible art, bridging art and commerce. And so you can see that Paul Budnitz, who started the company, says business is the vehicle to make something beautiful. So beauty was really at the core of the values. And part of that is because the brand's history started off from one-off custom-made toys. So people would actually take toys and then make new clothes for them in Japan mostly. So the company was built in that image, aiming to maintain that feeling of craft. The more detailed it was, the more we wanted to try it, because we were always trying to push the boundaries of quality. They were also sold at very limited editions. The limited nature of the work gave it a perceived value. It also meant that we could be ruthless about quality, and I spent my time there literally always talking in millimeters. Could you move this over a millimeter? And that's very small. It's because quality was a differentiator between collectible art and plastic toys for Kidrobot. We were also working with incredible artists and translating their work. But there's another approach to quality in business. During the Industrial Revolution, consistency and efficiency were very important to business. So at Kidrobot, it was all about quality and limited scale. But for Henry Ford, it was all about competition, mass production, and consistency. So this is where we start maybe getting the idea of quality control. Processes were being put in place to ensure consistency and to eliminate flaws. So as a worker, you had to do it right every single time. And so for designers in this type of scenario, which I am one of, we tend to like this control. We can be thoughtful. We can control all the details. We can create perfection. It's how we sort of reach our own standard of quality. It's the designer I always aspired to be. But my point in highlighting this complexity of quality is to say that while design shares many principles, designing for one business, like an art toy business, isn't the same as designing for a museum or a city or for people. So if quality is an expression of our brand values, then our definition of quality, or how we measure it, may have to adapt depending on those values. So what if the product we design for is not consistent, or what if we're designing for ambiguity or individuality? At Airbnb, the community is our brand, and personal hospitality is at the core of the values. When you host, you do it in your own way. So as designers, we don't want to control every aspect of that experience because the beauty of it is that it's unique to that relationship or that person. The very nature of the product is diverse, and it changes all the time. Our success lies in how many people we connect in a meaningful way. So for diners, it means our responsibility is not necessarily to how well we kern, although we care about that, but it's also to the community first. It's to help them tell their stories and connect to one another. So I have looked up a lot of definitions and quotes about quality, and I thought it was interesting that even within the definition of quality, there's sort of two different approaches. One is degree of excellence, which is what I described with Kid Robot. And another is quality becomes qualities, or the diverse sort of distinctness. And I think with Airbnb, we're designing for this. So we want to highlight the unique experiences that each person brings, and we build systems and tools to help influence that. So to illustrate this, I want to tell you about a project that we worked on recently for the Trips platform, and also, I'm sure not everyone maybe has heard of Trips, so I thought this project helped me evolve my understanding of quality, and Joe Gebbia kind of set it up really well in his TED Talk on designing for trust, so I thought I'd let him introduce it.
You know how most travel today is like, I think of it like fast food, right? It's efficient and consistent, right? At the cost of local and authentic. What if travel were like a magnificent buffet of local experiences? What if anywhere you visited, there was a central marketplace of locals offering to get you thoroughly drunk on a pub crawl in neighborhoods you didn't even know existed? Or learning to cook from a chef of a 5-star restaurant?
So what Joe is describing in this talk, it actually came true. And it's a product called Experiences, and that's within the Trips platform, which Trips is expanding from the home into the entire trip. And this idea of handcrafted activities that allow you to immerse in a community, it came to life last November. So with this, local hosts can invite you to immerse in their passion. You learn from them, you walk in their shoes. So you can go to the Bronx, for example, and this is Q, and he'll teach you how to flex. In the birthplace of hip hop, I went on this experience. I didn't quite get it. But I wish I did, because they're so passionate, and it was really awesome to be there with them. You can also stand up paddleboard through Dublin with Chris, or make homes in Martina's hat studio. Sorry, make hats in Martina's home studio in London. You might make homes in her hat studio, but I don't know what they would look like. So what was our challenge with this as an art department? We wanted to tell the vast potential for learning and connection that we just saw and described. And so we did what many brand teams would do. We set out to create a singular campaign. Let's get the messaging right. Let's tell the story. Let's pick a few hosts and highlight them. And we came up with a bunch of ideas. We made a case film. I think someone wrote a manifesto. We spent months sort of debating the idea and what people cared about or what the value was. And we showed it all internally, but it just didn't feel like we'd gotten there. And at the time, we were really inspired by travel agency posters. They sort of give you the sense that you're going to go into this magical world, and we wanted to capture that. And we were working with a design partner called Kodo, and they were working on how we could bring these kind of back to life now. And that started the idea of, okay, well, what if every single host has a poster? What if we sort of make them a star in their own movie? And then our team thought, well, if we're going to make a poster, we should probably give them a movie trailer, right? What if instead of one campaign, we made 100 or 300? What if we could individualize assets for every host and showcase what made them unique? So I'll show you a little bit about how this turned out. This is Paris, who takes you mountain biking in Cape Town.
Got lots of touch, but
And here's another one. This is Yang Chul in Seoul, and she does home-style cooking in her home. edited this one, and I love that moment. So to do this, how do we do this? We worked with videographers and photographers all over the world. We brought the footage back to a small editing agency in San Francisco, and 6 of us creative leads from different backgrounds, design, film, writing. We sat for 3 months, and we crafted each one. Scalable, right? So we crafted each vibe to highlight what made each host unique. And we showed what the experience entailed. So a really important part of this was that it was going to live in product. And for a brand team, that's really exciting on multiple levels. One, it makes our content usable. So we were actually creating content that would help people understand what experiences were and hopefully help them decide if it was for them. It also means that we weren't necessarily only in the channels. We were still thinking in app land. And we were excited to be at the center of the experience. So here's our approach, and I'm going to move quickly because that time does tick down fast. So first we created a model of excellence. We went kind of back to the Henry Ford model, right? The assembly line. We wanted to control every single factor so that we would have one perfect film. So for us, that was a shot list, art direction, budget, which was way higher than we would have for each one, the camera, the time of day. And it's kind of counterintuitive to do this, right? Because you're building something that you know you can't reach. But this we call a benchmark. It set our creative bar, and it helped us identify which factors we needed to create a truly inspirational and informational film. And it also up-leveled all the content because we were always saying, I don't think that one is as good as Zen Explorers. That was sort of what we were always saying. And so it helped us define what success looked like and what we had to measure against. And then we defined the guideline systems and tools. So this is sort of us letting go a little bit. Instead of having control at every stage, we set guardrails, right? So this allowed us to have diverse stories and diverse kind of outcomes of each story, but still kind of create our system that we felt we needed to make each one successful or at high quality. So this would be things like it had to be 30 seconds long, it had to have chapters that showed the hosts, the location, things like that. So what this did is it allowed us to have diversity of stories. So you can tell, I think, hopefully from the 2 examples I showed, there's a lot of different vibe or different ways of showing the experiences, but that they all sort of start to feel consistent. And this allowed us to scale with hundreds of filmmakers and over 350 stories. And finally, we integrated teams. So I think a couple different people have talked about how important this is, but we worked the way that many teams work. We're in brand, they're in product. You build a product, you throw it over the wall, brand makes some cool content to put in a box that you've thought of, and then product marketing launches it. But we realized really quickly this was underscoring the fact that we all had different definitions of quality. For operations, it was how fast can we get hosts onto the platform. For us, it was how beautiful is the content, what camera was it shot on. And for product, it obviously was how usable it was. So it made it really hard to resolve when our goals were differing. But when we brought it together, now we have a much more integrated model, and we work sort of in-stream together. And this has allowed, for me, for content, it's very rare that content would go through a user experience flow, and that has been amazing. Because a lot of times you create a video, but you never really get to hear how people react to it except for on Twitter. And so it was really nice to watch people interact and say, this is the kind of information I'm getting. This is what I need. And it also finally allows us to create a more cohesive brand story. So through this process, we've been able to adapt the design. As Richard mentioned, the platform you design for today will not be the one that you'll have in 6 months or 12 months, and that's true for us. So it's allowed us to sort of learn from what those videos were doing in the wild and adapt and create UI that kind of unified different content that was coming in. But now I really want to talk about the real deal. Because 350 sounds like a lot. Does it sound like a lot to you? I don't know. It felt like a lot when we were making them. It felt like scale, but it was not. That's not scale. I had this joke that we set ourselves up to scale, but dad jokes. So the thing is, our work was far from done because that was launch, and in launches you control everything. And now we needed to build this product, and more hosts were excited about this and wanted to host. And so now we really had to sort of approach what did it mean to create quality at scale? Because they're inherently at odds, right? You really can't have both. But this project, we really wanted to. And so remember our measurement, because we're a community-driven brand, and we want to highlight the diversity of the community. That included both the ability to embrace and celebrate that creative energy by the authentic value of the content itself. How accurately were we showing the experience? How beautifully could we represent it? And then also with our ability, to scale. Could we bring more people into the platform as quickly as possible? And that sort of ups our potential for these real connections in the real world. And so the sort of under the hood is that hosts wanted to come onto the platform, and we were like, but we just need to we need to film you first. So just give us 2 weeks and we'll come film you. And that was sort of creating a bottleneck. Because the scale train is leaving. And when we made 350, we were still driving the train. And we have amazing people on the team who are still on this train. They're kind of holding on for dear life, and they're creating really beautiful content every day. But eventually, we have to let go of this train, right? The train's going to move too fast, but it's going to be beautiful, because on that train will be community and people connecting, and hosts and guests. And as designers, we might not be able to build the train or make sure everything on the train is exactly as we wanted it, but we can build the tracks. And so I have this analogy that we're sort of on the sidelines with our kerchiefs waving, knowing that those tracks were built on sound design and dedication to quality and beauty, and that we've impacted the business's goals to help people understand and book travel and lead to more connection. And the hope is that one day we can take all of those learnings from that perfect factory model to the 350 scale, and we can create tools that will then enable the community to tell their own stories more beautifully from our learnings. So just to reflect, obviously at Airbnb, our definition of quality is very tightly tied to our community and how we want to showcase more of their stories. But all of your brands will have different challenges that are unique to you. And depending on your business goals, the way that you define and build towards quality will be personal to you and your companies. So I thought that these 3 steps kind of helped us adapt to scale and still create stories that we believe honor the authentic voice of the community, even as we've grown. And I hope they'll be helpful for you as well. So to recap, define what quality means for your brand. And as I mentioned, you might want to ask around. It's easy to assume that everyone has the same understanding, but they may not. Create tools and systems. So again, you're not going to be able to control every factor, but you can create tools and systems and use that systems thinking that will help guide the train. And then structure your teams for success. And I have 1 minute, so I'm going to go on my note on authenticity. Authenticity is such a buzzword, and so sometimes I avoid it. But I kind of wanted to say where I landed in this exploration of quality for myself on a personal level. We do live in a time when there's more and more content, and we have a responsibility not to create noise. There's more interaction with brands. I think Richard outlined this better than I can. But as designers, we do face situations where we're not going to have, or we're not going to want to have, control over all the full experiences that we shape. So the way that I contend with this is through the idea of authenticity. And for a while, even for this talk, I was trying to define quality. Quality is authenticity, because I think it sounds really cool. But I think what I'm really trying to say is that people are looking for truth, at least for the most part, and they're looking for authenticity. And in our research, we found that people don't even trust beautiful content as much anymore, because it feels like marketing. It feels like it's coming from a brand. And it might not feel authentic. So if we define what quality means for us personally and for our brands, and we own it, I think that will have the value that people will see. And because we can't be in control of every step of the way, we actually allow more space for more diversity of ideas. And I think that's a really exciting and powerful place to be. Thank you.
The need for designers to become more T-shaped. Again, being adapt and nimble across multiple skills and taking that adaptability and that nimbleness and being able to kind of go deep. So the contention or the question is for you two, and then we'll throw some questions back out. Is there an obsolescence to certain designers that only own one or two skills, because the other thing I saw at play here is the most magical work that I saw up there had some of the same emotional appeal, visual excitement, and fit and finish as some of the posters that are hanging in the other room done by medalists many years ago. But for the young designers out here, and many of you actually are design managers that hire people, where's our place as designers? And do you hire people, or do you see portfolios where, my God, this person's the best typographer I ever saw, get him in here? Or do you say, gosh, that's a great typographer and art director, but I'm scared to death at putting them into sort of more of a technology process that has strategic outcomes and client interaction. So can you riff on that for a second? Because I think we're all living in this space of flux. And what does that mean to you?
Yeah, I think, so inside our agency, we have talent from many different backgrounds. And I think, just to go back to what Dana said about typographers, we have some people on staff that are amazing at typography, and we're definitely going to play those people into the projects that require that type of work. Now, we actually just finished a proposal for a hospitality and tourism company where the ask was really focused on personalized content at scale using some type of like artificial intelligence platform. The person that I'm thinking of who has the typography background, that person can play into the proposal in terms of helping us put some thoughts and guidelines around the content that we want to produce. But the actual person that's going to drive that proposal is a creative director that really understands artificial intelligence. They understand personalizing content at scale. So we definitely want to have as many ingredients as possible inside the agency in terms of the different skill sets. But when I think about where things are heading and who is going to be that point person that's curating the teams, in my mind, those point people will have a little bit more of the skills that our clients are looking for in terms of like these forward-facing projects. But things like storytelling, typography, brand, UX, those are all necessary ingredients. And some people that actually come up through the agency as typographers and brand people, they're eventually going to learn about bots. They're eventually going to learn about AI, and they start to develop their T as well. So we really want people to have depth in terms of their individual skill set, but eventually when you grow, you have to be broad and you have to be able to drive work that is forward-facing.
Alex?
Yeah, I would second that. But I also think I work for a brand that is driven by things feeling handmade and personalized. So we still are really interested in the analog and or skills like traditional graphic design and typography. But I would say that for an in-house team, it's kept very, very lean. So I'd say the people in-house do tend to be more generalist, and they are working more broadly, but we have an extremely healthy kind of people surrounding us that are freelancers or contractors who come in and really support us and who sit with us and share their skills. So I think that it's not that those skills maybe aren't as valuable now, but they might be maybe less like in-house driving every day and more supporting on specific projects.
And I would ask you, Alex, because you are a jumper person that went from an interesting background to a new one in terms of your professional life. I would guess that whoever hired you and the skills that you learned being part of a toy-making company were probably the most interesting and exciting aspects of your portfolio and the conversation you had with your new employer at Airbnb. Is that fair?
Yeah. I think I was hired at Airbnb basically on pure curiosity.
Ah.
I was really, really curious about the problems and spent a lot of time with the user research team when I first started. I was on the graphic design team, but I spent maybe 25% of my time sitting with user research so that I could understand.
And being on the graphic design team, I suspect you came out of a school that really doubled down on traditional skills of two-dimensional design, or
I
no,
wish I
did you-
could say that. I was a Spanish literature major.
Wow. How about that? See. Hola.
But design school is
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah, and you know what? You know what? Some of the best designers I know, in fact, one sitting right in the front row, came from completely different backgrounds. Rick, you were a photography major, right? And painting and drawing. But a big round of applause for our speakers.